So what I would like to do today is we have a guest here, Uncle Mo, and he's an expert on a variety of things. He has a lesson to share with you today. Also at the back we have Auntie Laura and Auntie Patty, and they're both also experts in the garden and working here. So we have a lot of good things rooting for us here today. So I'd like to keep our calm attention here, to do our lessons in here, pay attention well, and then we'll go outside after we're out of here. So basically, when it gets to that half hour, it's wanting to go outside, so we have about 25 minutes or something. So go ahead.
Hi guys. Right. So we're going to talk about something that I think is pretty important. Because everybody here goes to the toilet.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I do.
Okay. Now what happens when you're done?
Wait, flushes.
That's right. And then where does it go?
Then we go to sewer. Septic tank.
Septic tank or a sewer or something like that. Here in Hawaii we're pretty good about that. In some places not so much. Maybe they don't even have the money to build a sewage system, things like that. In what they call the developing world, in probably 2/3 of the world, it goes straight out to the nearest river or field or to the ocean. Do you want to be that kid surfing in that ocean?
No.
Yeah. Now what we do is a little bit different, right? So what we do is we pump it through, well, okay, we're going to get graphic here, right? Because when you poop, it's like that much stuff, yeah?
Yeah.
How much more? I mean, maybe that much, yeah? You're a big boy now. Alright? So, if you were trying to think of the best way to get rid of this, would it occur to you to say, well, let's mix it with 6 gallons of clean water and then throw it down a pipe? Does that seem like a good idea to anybody? Because that's what we do. Yeah, that's what happens when you flush the toilet, right? You got that much poop, and then press the button, the lever, and you get 6 gallons of water coming down. If you got a low flush toilet, it's like 2. Okay, fine. So you take that much and you make it that much contaminated water. And then you've got to think about, now what are we going to do with all this filthy water? We don't want to go to filter. Well, you filter it and then what?
Drink it.
I don't know about that. What are you going to do with all the stuff that comes out? This is the question. Maybe you filter it. Maybe you could do that, right? But maybe there's a better way. What's that?
Burn it.
Burn it.
Stink.
That's right. So what we do is basically we take care of the stink, and that's what we do. What we do is we pump it into either a septic tank or a sewage pump, right? And it just sits there.
Forever.
And large because it's surrounded. It's got water on top. There's some treatment happening here. They put in some bacteria and stuff to try to eat the sewage. Yeah, but there's always new stuff coming in. So all this water is basically contaminated.
Don't they break it down with chemicals?
They break it down more with bacteria than chemicals. Chemicals are not so effective. There are lots of naturally occurring bacteria that indeed break it down. So that's a good point. We're going in that direction. All right. But the other thing is that now we've got all this contaminated water and we've got to pump it. And that costs energy, so we're using a lot of power when we do that as well, right? And we either burn diesel, coal, black smoke, right? like that
Do you?
idea? Alright, so the thing is, I would say that if any of you sensible people were starting from the beginning, you would not come up with a system that's done. You know why it happened? Queen Victoria, you know who that is?
Yeah.
Yeah, who's
Oh.
Queen Victoria?
She was a queen of England during the Victorian age. She created.
Right. And actually during the time that Hawaii was colonized. Yeah. But she decided, before that, what did people do? They went in a bucket and then they dumped it in the field or, something like that. Of course, in a big city, it got pretty nasty, right? Queen Victoria decided she's a queen. She doesn't want to see her stuff. She wants to be able to push a button and make it go away. So, a Victorian engineer invented something called the Thunderbox. The Thunderbox. That was the first flush toilet. It was in Buckingham Palace. Yeah. Okay, but that's just history, And then of course, it's Queen Victoria had it, so everyone's like, oh, well, Queen Victoria had it, I want one too, right? And that's kind of how it started. And then, before they started, they invented sewage ponds and things like that. That just went into the Thames River in London. And then, we had this going on, right? We had cholera, dysentery. Well, that's where they got the water from as well, right?
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good reaction. Right? So then they figure, okay, well, we can't have this, right? People are getting sick. It's really serious. But we don't want to give up the luxury of pressing a button and making that thing go away. So what we're going to do is just dig some big holes, put it there, fill them full of water. When they're full of shit, then you're going to cap them. You're going to put concrete on top, make sure it just kind of sits there, and then you're going to dig another one and do the same thing. Right? That's kind of what we do here. Okay, so this is probably not the way that you and I would think of dealing with our stuff, right? You kind of want to make it go away quickly, easily, naturally, as far as possible. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you guys know about composting, right? You've been working in the garden,
Yeah.
right? So you were talking about using bacteria to break down human waste, or any kind of waste. Those bacteria occur naturally in the soil. Okay? So we can use that process also to deal with our own waste. Right? And that's where composting toilets come into the picture. Now, if everybody had a composting toilet, you wouldn't need all this stuff, and you wouldn't have any of this going on, right? If everybody just took care of it right in their house, where it happens.
It would stink.
That's the problem. You guys think composting toilets stink. Why? Well, let's talk about what happens when you do composting. Right? So what happens when those little bacteria start to work? You guys know?
You start to break down all of the leftover things. Becomes mushy.
That's physically what happens, and that's at a microscopic level what happens. But basically, those bacteria are eating that stuff, right? They're metabolizing it, and they're producing other things like we eat or we breathe and we produce carbon dioxide in the water, right? And that's because of all the stuff we eat that we metabolize and produce carbon dioxide in water. What we can't metabolize comes out the other end, right? So there are bacteria that do the same thing, right? What is this? Oxygen. That's right. Yeah, it's diatomic oxygen as occurs naturally in the atmosphere. So the bacteria that use oxygen, we call them aerobic bacteria. They work with air. And bacteria that use anaerobic or processes, they don't use oxygen. And now both these types of bacteria exist in the soil. Okay? But in areas where there is plenty of oxygen, where the soil is well aerated, aerobic bacteria around it. That's all on the surface. Down below, like if you have a big compost pile and it stinks, what is that? Anaerobic bacteria. Right? So when aerobic bacteria work, they produce, what is that?
Carbon dioxide. H2O. Water.
When anaerobic bacteria start to work, they produce all kinds of stuff. Do you guys know what this is?
CH4.
That's right. So what's the C?
Carbon.
What's the H?
Hydrogen.
Right, so it's a molecule called methane. Yeah, it's part of natural gas.
Parts.
Also. Right? Yeah, this is another one. It's called hydrogen sulfide. S is sulfur. Sulfur is actually you get a little bit of this coming out of the steam vents. Okay. Right? That's that rock makes now. Yeah. This is nitrogen dioxide. Nitrogen dioxide. Nitrogen monoxide. It produces a whole lot of what we call, here's a good word for you. What does it mean?
Oh, noxious gas. Nauseous.
Noxious.
Noxious.
What does it mean?
You can't breathe it or it'll like make you sick? Or
Basically it means smelly, so yeah. Yeah, right.
so it's so noxious gas is like type of gas that you should in a car, like the guy said, it'll make you sick.
Yeah, it's stuff that you don't want to be breathing. Noxious actually means smelly. Right? It means that it smells bad. So noxious gases are those types of gases that smell bad. Typically, right? So the thing is, if you can have composting going on, it's aerobic. Carbon dioxide doesn't smell like anything. Water doesn't smell like anything. So what you get is no skin. So now, how would you design a toilet to make that?
Kind of like a outhouse, but like in the bottom part, it has like vents for air to come in.
That's a good start. So let's start there.
Yeah, do you have windows in your bathroom? Yeah.
Yeah.
Who doesn't? Somebody with all holes.
Alright, so we have our outhouse, right?
Even because I did.
It's a dry toilet.
It's a dry toilet? What is that? Oh,
There's no water.
Yeah. Oh yeah! There's like a urine inside an airport and then there's a urine in the airport. Because no water. No water.
So now you want air coming in here, right? You said you want air coming in.
You know what? There's a 35
Just go
Well,
ahead.
won't the
Listen up, if you want to speak, as soon as I have
smell of it come out from the air vent?
Well, let's think about that. Is there something? You're right. You know. So we want a couple of things to happen. We want no smell to begin with, so we want to keep it aerobic. Okay. But then we also don't really want to have this stuff. Like we don't really want to be smelling what's going on in here anyway. Right? So that means that we got to do something about the airflow. Right? So here's what we can do. We can put a chimney up there.
Oh, going to the air.
Yeah, so now air is going to, really what you want. Okay, so now, actually if we have a little extractor fan,
What's that?
Just like one of those little fans, you know, like on your computer, you get pretty heat.
Oh yeah. I have it in the grocery store.
Yeah, sure. Or, you know, you see some restaurants that have a hood, right? So you just have a fan go, and that's going to suck the air up this way and out here, right? So that's a step. That's good. But now, practically speaking, what's going to happen with the pilot?
There's no longer going to be aerobic because there's something on the arrow.
Well, no, we're going to have air coming in. This is not airtight. We're going to put the vents in, like you said. Yeah. So we just want to make sure that the air is not going to come out. We want to be drawing it in. So that's why we put this little fan. So now the fan is drawing air up the chimney, it's got to come into the box. Okay? All right. Now, again, we're going to get kind of graphic here. You guys have all seen poop, right? Like it's wet and slimy stuff, right? But think about it. Like if you have something that's completely surrounded by a thin film of water, is there any way for oxygen to get through that?
No.
Not really. So it's going to be
It's like just stink.
That's why it stinks,
Oh.
right? So now we got to think about, well, what can we do about that?
We have to have like a water sucker that sucks out all the water.
Yeah, I mean, you could, that would be a way to do it. Is there an easier way?
Well, you could just sink the ground with sort of a slime.
Yeah, but how are you gonna get your ground?
But that's the thing, you kind of want to make sure that you keep the solid stuff and let the liquid drain away, right? So here's an idea.
Suck a little vacuum.
Here's an idea. How about if we have sloped floor with a little barrier here, right? So now all your stuff is going to pile up here and the liquid just drains out here, drains out to a drain field. Okay.
Reusing and drink the water.
No, you don't want to reuse that. You have this going out to like the flower bed or someplace, but someplace that's really exposed to the sun,
Oh.
right? So it kind of gets broken down by the sun. Okay, but you'll have gravel all around, and then flowers and stuff.
Yeah, but isn't there like a way that you could, that the sun can go into where the poop is going and you have
Well, no.
water?
Because this is going to be all encased, right? This is going to be like a chamber, right? You know,
Like a mat in the
yeah, you don't want to leave that open because then also you'll get like insects and stuff going there, and that's a mess, right?
Where's the ground level on this model? Like, so this whole
This is
tank
ground.
is above ground.
Yeah, this is ground.
Oh, so you just
You take an elevator up there.
Hey,
Oh,
we
nice.
the stairs. You guys are all fit.
Oh, that's some high stairs.
What we
If
do
you
later,
really-
It doesn't have to be that high. I'm just drawing it to give myself room. But okay, so now think about what's happening here. Now we have air coming in. This stuff is dry, right? So the air can go through. Okay? And the liquid drains out. Okay, so you treat the liquid here with sun.
Or the
the sun's on your
This
ground.
is the goo.
Does it just stay here?
What's that?
Does it just stay here?
Well, it stays there, and aerobic composting stems there.
It disintegrates. Don't people they put drains in some sort of vacuum? Yeah, what?
Why would you do that? That's how you lay into your septic tank. But then, what are you going to do? You're going to go back to the sewage pump. Right? Do you have a question? Oh, okay. You have a question.
What happens if the person keeps going pee and pee and pee, and then it just keeps in voice?
Well, the liquid will all drain out. Yeah. So it's going to dry. Yeah. But the other thing that you do is you throw a handful of sawdust in there every time you go, right? Now instead of wood chips, grass clippings, stuff like that, right? That dry leaves, but like kind of finely ground. So you throw a handful of that in there, and now it's going to dry out, right? Okay. So this is actually kind of a better system than what we got here.
Yeah.
And so you got to do a couple more things to keep it aerobic, right? Because you really want it aerobic. Okay. One is that every so often you got to reach in here with the rake. No, it's okay. You can just leave the rake in there. You only have to grab this. You only have to grab this end, right? And just kind of move it around some. Like you move a compost pile, right? It's okay. You can just have like a little hatch back here. You know, but you're right in the sense that your reaction is a natural one.
Mushy.
And yeah, who here really wants to go deal with that stuff? Nobody, right?
Daddy.
I know you weren't sticking your hand up for that.
Dad likes that.
No, good on you, man. You can be the man with the rake.
Good job. Dad, I'll hire you for 5 books to do it.
So, if you guys want to go do some research on this type of toilet, yeah, check
People
it
have
into
to
it.
have toilets.
Oh yeah, in Central Park in New York, yeah, these are the kind of toilets they have now. And imagine now, that's Central Park, right? They get like 2 million people going there every day. That's more than the population of Honolulu, right? And these are the kind of toilets they use, so it works. Right? It's just that people don't know. Right? So remember this. Right. It's a Latin word meaning slope to floor.
So would this be possible in like an apartment building or like?
Yeah, in fact, also at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, on Vancouver Island, they have like multi-story buildings.
So you have to walk up a building to go to the bathroom?
No. It's a multi-story. It's like a building with 12 floors.
So each room has that type of bathroom.
Yeah, all the bathrooms are of this type. Now, I mean, that's probably a little bit more sophisticated than the outhouse we're going to build out that, but.
Oh, we're going to go what? Oh,
Shouldn't
so serious.
When you tear down the classroom.
Well, I mean, shouldn't you build one instead of flashing and like dealing with all that pollution? Sorry, hold up. Hey.
Can you guys be quiet? Thank you. So if you were going to build one of these outside, like here, let's say, what would you build the chamber with? What kind of material? Concrete? And so you would never need to move it? Or you could just keep these?
No, because well, as the waste turns into compost, you scoop out the compost, right? So you have the key is to make the chamber big enough that it's not going to fill up, right? That composting can continue to happen. Then you're removing compost on a continuous basis, right? So this is also called a continuous compost toilet.
There's a lot of what are you gonna eat?
How long has technology been available? Like, how long has those toilets been in New York City?
Those toilets have been in New York City for at least since 2011.
Nobody heard about them?
Well, people who use them have heard about them, but you guys haven't been, I guess. Right?
Never heard about them? Like, we don't know. Yeah. Is it in the paper?
Well, I mean, how many newspaper articles do you get about toilets? No, so those toilets have been around. Hey, hold on. Those toilets have been in Central Park since 2011. The technology was first developed by a Swedish guy. I want to say in early 1900s, maybe late 1800s.
Now they start using them?
What's that?
Now they start using them?
No, because everybody wants to just flush and make it go away like Queen Victoria.
Alright.
So I just wanted to take an opportunity to also, aside from the pollution, Patty and I just moved from California. I don't know if you guys know much about California, but there's a huge drought. There's these huge lakes, and you can look at pictures, maybe your teachers can show you later, but these lakes are just, they're full and vibrant of everything, and they're sucked completely dry. And so there's big issues in California specifically. We're here and surrounded by a lot of water, but people aren't going to have drinking water soon. And we're not going to have food to plant our gardens, and we're not going to have food to feed our cattle and everything else. So not only is pollution an issue, but every time we flush those 6 gallons out, we're not able to use it to go plant our gardens, and we're not able to drink it for ourselves. So beyond pollution, we want to think about water conservation too.
Very good point. Okay, so we're at 2:30. Anyone have any questions? Oh, sorry.
So yeah, that's
Where is it?
Yeah.
If you start anywhere in the Hawaiian Islands, and you dig a hole through the center of the earth,
On the other
and
side
you
of the world.
keep going, yeah, it's exactly the other side of the world from Hawaii. I moved here.
So it's technically the opposite amount of time.
It's the antipode.
Yeah.
So what time is it over there right now?
same time, but 12 hours later.
Right, so it's this time of the morning. Oh, here.
Egypt.
Egypt.
Yeah, Egypt goes down to Maui.
Oh,
Egypt.
How many days is it?
I know where that is. It's in Botswana.
That's right.
Oh yeah, I can do it.
Really into
What a surprise, Travis.
one thing you're
No, Queen Victoria was the queen of the English, or of the United Kingdom. Which,
Okay, so I'm gonna re-engage you guys here, and like to thank Uncle Mo for teaching us, because this kind of brought together all the things we've been talking about in the carbon cycle and the nitrogen cycle, talking about anaerobic and aerobic decomposition. And this brought it really practical to something that we all do every day. And we can all see how these concepts we've learned in agriculture really apply to our life. So it's not just about agriculture, it's about living in harmony with the earth, right? And so that's why we go out and we practice aloha aina, because understanding the love of the land and the earth and all these systems relate together, makes us in harmony with it, so we can live better and save water, all these good things, right? So what I would like to do now is to go transition to being outside. I would like to do this in a way that we can pair up with one of us mentors and teachers here to work with you in an area. So, yes.
We work on our pocket.
Yeah, we need water.